Welcome back, everybody, to the Focus to Win podcast. Today's discussion is pretty interesting. We always talk about the 1% mentality. I remember growing up, as an athlete, coaches, scouts, everybody referenced this 1% mentality or this idea. And, Lee and I always talk about like the very few select group of people, what separates them from everybody else. So first and foremost, let's talk about what is the 1%. What is a 1%er in today's world?
Yeah, and it could mean so many different things, anywhere from the sports world to business to money, like all of those things, different definition. But 1% is usually like who's the cream that raises to the crop, the crop that raises to the top, whatever you want to call it. But who is raising to that event? Yeah. I think of with sports. You had your days back then, and it's like what it took to get there. So I want to dig a little bit in your background for a change. So you were 15 years old. I just remember having some of the discussions with you and your dad. Yeah. And your dad breaks out a whiteboard and starts drawing up because you're already like the perfect size athlete, right? It's like for baseball. So so tell us what that looks like.
Wow. I mean, where do I start? I know in our first episode we touched on it a little bit, but I want to dive a little deeper into kind of how that process came about. It did start with the 1% idea. First thing is what I realized is what is 1%. 1% is the select few group that separate themselves from everybody else. And the way I view it as, no matter what the environment, circumstance, or whatever it may be, is these people will always succeed. Right? And that's really, if you break it down to a fundamental standpoint, that's what it is. So when I was going through this trial and error, I understood, number one, I came into high school probably 5'3", 105 pounds was the exact weight. Okay. I remember weighing myself, and I'm like, holy crap. And
would you say 5'3" and how much?
I was 105 pounds.
Okay, wow.
So I was very prepubescent to leave it at that. I walk into Calvert Hall, which was a predominantly high-end athletic school. You had kids who were already committed to colleges, to Power 5. My best friend was actually committed to University of North Carolina, who the year prior won a national championship.
Nice.
So to see that expectation standard for what is set was a little intimidating for me.
Oh, I'm sure. Especially all 105 of you.
Oh, my God. And it got to my head, honestly. Right. I've always been super competitive, and when you see yourself with the physical limitations, it really puts that insecurity inside of you. So long story short, I tried out for multiple teams, including the high school team, and I got cut from, I think it was, I look back, it was 6 teams.
Wow.
And I was devastated because then I'm thinking to myself, I'm 13, 14 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, I got no chance of making it. I cried in my bathroom when there's one specific day where, and I mentioned this in the first episode, that my dad had this long talk with me, and it was more of, my dad would always be very tough, but this was more of a nurturing conversation, and he pretty much told me, this is not where it ends, this is just the start to the journey. And the 1%er came out in that moment. It was more of the mindset of, like he said, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, they have all three things in common. They failed a lot early in their years. Tiger Woods not so much, but Michael Jordan and Kobe very specifically did. Team, and he says, what is going to separate you from the normal or the other 99% of these people? Right. And I didn't know how to answer that right away. So what he did was, well, let's start with number one, and that's, what's your vision? What do you see? Because if you don't have a vision, or what does your future self look like, how can you chase after it? So drew on the board. I drew my exact weight. I wrote 5'11", 185 pounds is what I wanted to achieve. I wrote down I want to throw 91 miles an hour across the diamond, and I want to be able to hit home runs when I wanted to.
Okay.
So that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was the action. So that next morning I told myself I'm going to the gym 5 days a week. Throughout, I don't care if I'm tired or whatever, I'm going to give it everything I possibly have, because I knew that my physical limitations it was a good thing because it pushed me, but it's also a bad thing because I want to get overlooked from every scout that saw me. Yep. And the result that happened out of that was, by my junior year, I received my first Division I offer from Quinnipiac University, which was a small D1. It wasn't someone I achieved for, but it was something. Right. And I hit all of my numbers. I was 5'11", 185 pounds, and I threw 92 miles an hour across the diamond. So I hit all those things. But it was a culmination of both the vision, the writing it down and then the effort that came after it. Because what I noticed is that I started to separate myself from 99% of the kids. I was the only one in the gym. It felt weird. I was the only kid that was staying after practice. And I was the only kid that was doing the extra things. That's where I kind of saw the culmination and results of the 1% mentality. And it wound up leading me to something even better than Quinnipiac, going to University of Maryland and playing Power 5 baseball for, at that time, one of the top teams in the country. So it really enlightened me to that, and it's so amazing how it has translated into the real world. And now I'm restarting.
Right.
You know,
Vision, but it all started with vision first of all, and then hard work, a lot of effort, diet.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're eating a whole hell of a lot more.
Oh my God!
So
super strict.
But I just think of all the combination of the things. Again, we go back to the compound effect over and over, and it's like, all right, these little things add up. And this was 2000. Well, you're 15 then.
Yep.
And then by the time you hit your numbers, you were 18.
Pushing 18. Yeah.
So 3 years happened overnight, right? Just like the iceberg.
Right. You know, it's so funny because when you talk about your health, right, and you were a 1%er from a micro standpoint and honestly regional standpoint for what you were as an earner, as a businessman, but health-wise, you weren't a 1%.
No, hell no. I was heavy. I was like 255 pounds. I was overweight. My face was like this big.
Right.
Belly, I was like in size 40 pants.
Right.
Now I'm down to like a 35, 35 pants. I'm like ecstatic the difference, but it took hard work, and it's been 8 years of it getting back on track because I got off track probably for 7 or 8 years.
Right.
So amazing of mindset, finding the right trainers, start changing your diet, changing lifestyle. Because I remember the doctor saying lifestyle. I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, all right, if he would have said change all your habits, and I would say if anybody says change lifestyle, really means change your habits.
Yeah.
So take that out of today as like, what are you doing? Are you getting up earlier? Are you changing your diet? Are you changing your workout regimen? And and then working out with Cadre for all those years, and then changing again now, going to a different workout is like, excuse me, and then working hard at that, and then still going in and then going for a 2.5, 3 mile walk after, just like, all right, that's a release point.
That's what separates you. When we talk about your like morning workout and you always checking with each other, you say, I have my morning workout, but the one thing that separates you is that walk after.
Yeah.
Because that's where that growth happens. That's the 1% mentality, right? It's that I not only am I or getting up early with everybody else, but you're in a room with other people, right?
Sure.
And let's say it's how many?
25, 30 people.
25, 30 people. So you're already in a small niche that gets up early and does that. But then you're the only person I guarantee in that room that probably takes that walk right after.
Yeah, you go home, and especially now it's cold.
Yep.
Put sweatpants on, gloves, hat, and all that in these 30-degree mornings,
excuses,
and
right?
just go do it.
Right.
Like I don't love the cold anymore. I hate the cold. So now go out, get that done. But it's mindset more than anything else, and that's self-development time for me. Of I'm walking, I'm sometimes having conversations because the people I know that know, like, hey, we don't have a lot of time during the day to talk, so I'll try to catch up with them early if they're early birds. And then what am I listening to? Yeah. Because I don't listen to the news. They're so different. Like, what am I filling my brain with so I can keep, help pulling everybody up? You can't push a string, but you can pull a string, right? So it's a matter of like, how do you help pull everybody else up to get you where they want to go?
I love
but
that.
You also have to find out what they're looking for too. So I think a lot of time with like the vision board or whiteboard, and you start laying out really what you want, then it's the action. So like I'm sure on the whiteboard, then you probably went to what activities do I have to do?
Correct.
Do I have to, what's my diet have to be? Well, like proteins and so forth. And like, that's a whole segment of it. Then what's my training have to be? What time do I get up? All my habits. So again, lifestyle is all the habits. What are those habits that are changing to get now your lifestyle has changed because of the habits that you created?
Spot on. And it's funny, the thing that many people probably forgot about with what he just said or probably bypassed is that it's not just making the small habits, it's doing the 1% habits. So I'm doing a 1% workout, which means I'm working out harder than the 99 other percent that are in there. I'm doing 90 or 1% diet. So I'm not doing a fad. I'm not doing the easy diet. I'm doing a consistent diet that I'm going to do every single day. So you're not perfect.
Are you tracking your workouts, what you're doing? Like,
yes.
I would imagine, because I think of watches. Like I turn my watch on when I work out. I wear a heart monitor that displays so I can see where I'm ranking. So it's like, We're competitive.
Right.
Where am I ranking? I don't want to be last on the list.
Correct.
But if I can be in the top 3 or 4, especially with some of these people that are super fit and younger than me, great. I mean, that just gives me, like that Saturday I had an hour workout. It was, instead of 45 minutes, it was a 60-minute one. And I have a head cold. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to go. I'm like, just go. So I went. And I had like 153 average heart rate. I burned over 1,000 calories.
That's kicking ass.
So I was like, all right, when I was done, I was so exhausted. And then I come back and I'm like, shoot, we need cases of water at the office. And my mom needs some water. I need some water for my office. So I go to BJ's and get 40 cases of water. And then I'm in line and somebody's in front of me. It's a husband and wife and kids. And I could see he had this big gun safe. And I'm like, shit, she's not going to be able to help him get in a car. So I stop her and I said, look, you guys need some help. I'll help you. I was like, where you park? I walk over to him, and thankfully there was another guy because there was 3 of us trying to get this gun safe in the car. I'm like, I can't imagine her trying to help him, but I'd want to make sure 1% mindset would be, I see somebody else's wife there. Let me go help them, because if it's my wife, that's I would hope
everybody
somebody else
else
would do
is
that.
bypassing that.
Yeah, they're just walking right by him. I'm like. So I went, and then they're trying to chase me down to help. I was like, they see me on the other side of the parking lot, and I'm loading cases of water, and they're like, no. I was like, I got it. Don't worry about it. This is my exercise. So, but I was exhausted at the end of the day.
They didn't know that. But it's one of those things where it's so important to write it down first. I mean, because everybody has this generalization when they start to make goals. I think they're too generalized. You need to be as concrete and direct as possible. Because if you really look at your journey from a weight loss perspective and even a business perspective, you were very concrete with everything that you wanted to obtain. Like, you know exactly what body fat percentage you want to do. And that's what pushes you to go carry that safe.
Right.
That's what pushes you to go get the water and take those extra steps and making sure everybody's taken care of. Because it's so concrete on what number you're thinking about, that number, like 3% body fat. I want to make X amount of dollars. I know exactly the dollar per hour we always talk about, right? So because it's so concrete, you know exactly what you're shooting after. And so many people just say, I want to lose X amount. Okay, well, what does that look like in a week?
They say they want to lose some weight. That's that, like, generic. And it's like, how do you program your brain? Your brain's searching for what you want, and you just said some. Just like people say, I want to make more money.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to give you $1 more, and there's more money. That's not like, you have to be very on target, because what you mentioned too was, and you have to vision what you see. And like, I remember when Travis was playing baseball, and I'm like, striking out. Like, what do you have to? So I remember you telling him, like, you have to envision where you're hitting the ball. Like, pay attention where it's going, where you see it going. And all of a sudden, he goes and he hits, and he's like, hit it. And I was like, but you have to program your brain and what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's so amazing how the power of your brain. I mean, I wish our eyes could see energy and all these crazy things that happen that like our eyes just don't have the capability to see. You could feel energy when people walk into rooms. You could feel when someone's successful. You could just tell by the way they stand, the way they talk, the way they present themselves. This dude or woman, they got it figured out. I don't know what that. And that's the 1%er kind of energy, the aura, the envisioning. It's because they know where they're going. These people almost like anticipate life before it happens. Not every time, but you obviously know there's times where you've been prepared because you anticipate it. You think about, or just on another level, how life operates. You envision your business moving forward. You envision these different things. And not everybody can see that, unfortunately.
Going back to with baseball, so you're coming out of college, or coming out of high school, going to college. So you went right to an Ivy League school, right? No. So let's talk a little bit about what that was, what it looked like, what did it take, plus all the small things. I think the small things is what people, they think the 1%. I'm like, yeah, but it's little. Correct. All of a sudden, now you're there.
Yeah, so this is actually linked to the next topic we wanted to focus, and it's being realistic versus exceeding the normal expectation. I don't want to throw anybody to the bus, but my college counselor, who just so happened to be one of the coaches on the team, he brought me in one day. This was probably my junior year, right before I got my first Division I offer, which is pretty ironic. And I remember him telling me, I was thinking about going to junior college just because I knew the route that it would took could have led to better opportunities. And he told me, he's like, well, you just need to be realistic. Why don't we shoot for like a Division II school? And there's nothing against Division II whatsoever.
But 1% mindset.
But I didn't want to achieve that. I conditioned myself the past 3.5 years. I was in my junior year by now to go to the next level at the highest possible, level of ball, level of school, the whole nine. So that I was taking no for answer. And that was a tough thing to do because I pretty much told my coach, middle finger, screw you. I'm not.
I'm sure he didn't say it quite that way.
Yeah, no. But I didn't take it. So I took the journey to middle of nowhere, West Virginia, and I honestly can say that was one of the best times of my life. It was a school of a town, honestly.
It didn't start out that way, though.
No. I arrived to campus, a town of 1,000 people. I knew no one. They all come from a different cloth. These are all farm country boys, spitting, chewing tobacco, the whole nine. And here I am, like I'm the preppy, clean cut guy. So it was a tough go for me. I was crying the first practice. I got ripped from my infield coach because I screwed up on the first play of our practice. And I was like, Dad, I don't know if this is for me. There's one McDonald's and a Walmart, and that's it. Like, what am I supposed to do? He said, you just got to push through. This is actually a good thing. It's a good sign. And I am so blessed I had that coaching staff. They are probably one of the most impactful people in my life because without them, I'm not going to Maryland without them. But by the time I started there and left there, I had to really search within. There was not a good signal for phone. I wasn't on my phone all the time. I was in the mountains, and that's all I had. I had myself in the mountains and my teammates. And we had such a tight knit. We were going camping together, and we had these long talks about where we wanted to go in life. And that's what was so impactful to me. And it ultimately led to 6 Division I offers because of the hard work, the no phone, the being by myself, the hard-nosed coaches that were blue-collar guys that lived the small-town life. They pushed me to exceed the next level. And if I didn't develop that 1% mentality years prior, I probably would have left. Yeah. Most kids, if you look at a lot of athletes that commit to big-time schools and had it very easy during their childhood, they're out. They usually leave the school or they transfer for the easier option. I didn't do that. I pushed through that, and I can say it was God's blessing that it worked out that way, because what the result was that culmination of years in high school translated to the year and a half to 2 years in junior college with nothing out there, to now having the reward of putting on the University of Maryland jersey, stepping on the field, crowd of thousands of people, and having games on ESPN and those type of things.
So, that never happens. But I think of your phone call at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. We're missing out all the easy stuff because it's like you have to go through these hard things to get. You don't go from 0 to 1% or whatever to the very top, and without all this freaking hard work. Everybody looks at it as like, oh, I want the easy route. I want the $39.95 pill that I can take and it's going to get me there. That's not going to get you there.
It's so funny because it's very similar to dieting. Like, if you ever notice when you start to hit your diet, you're hitting stride, there's always that crave where you're craving that one thing. It's usually the worst is when people crack.
Right.
And it's almost like it gets a little bit harder as you rise. So, story of my life, I'm before a regional game, it's 4 a.m. University of Maryland, I knew was recruiting me, but I haven't heard from the coach in a long time. I'm thinking to myself, I'm probably going to commit to one of these other schools that offer me. Well, I had a call at 4 a.m. the day before a regional game. It's like our biggest game of the year. And it's the Maryland recruiting coordinator. And all he wanted to know is, hey, I'm coming to your game today. Could you send me the address? I'm like, Coach Moose, if you're watching this, thanks for this. But it was 4 a.m. Like, dude, are you serious? So you could have just looked this up online. So I sent it over to him. And as he arrives to the game, I remember hitting a home run. And I'm circling the base, and I see him approach the game. And I had the best game of my life. And I leave the game, and I'm thinking, I got this in the bag. I played really well. He calls me, and he says, listen, we're going to offer you, be a part of our team, the whole nine. But he goes, I'm going to tell you why, though. And this was pretty eye-opening experience.
Yeah, please listen very closely.
Yeah, because simultaneously, I was getting recruited against the kid that was playing the same position as me on the other team. And he says, I was recruiting both of you, and he goes, the only reason that I hands down wanted you was how you prepared, how you walked and carried yourself. I watched you warm up. I watched you take your prep step. It was all the small details I would have never thought. I thought it was, he goes, I couldn't give a shit if you hit a home run. Matter of fact, it didn't matter to me at all. I was watching the way you warmed up. I was actually standing in the parking lot watching you. So if all you athletes are out there listening to this, it really matters, and it's going to come down to you or another kid by how you warm up, the way you dress, the way you present yourself on the field. And I don't know if I told you this, but ironically, months prior to this, my infield coach, who chewed me out in the beginning when I first arrived on campus, lit me up during a team scrimmage because my stirrup, my sock, was turned the wrong way. I mean, dug into me. He says, you mother effer, because you don't ever walk on the field looking like that again. You look like you have pride in the game. And ever since, it wound up being the reason why I'm having that opportunity. So it was a very eye-opening experience, and that's, again, the 1%er culmination come together.
It's the little things, and your morals are always on display.
Oh my God.
So remember that. Like, I'll never forget Gary Keller when I was in a mastermind. He ended up, it was somebody else in the company that he'd seen somebody going through security, and it was somebody in the company going off on like a TSA person, like in the airport, and that person ended up getting fired. But he's like, why would you do that? You're in public like that. Like, so how you act, but it was how you interacted with like the other players, how you interacted with coaches, all those things that you do. People see it.
Yeah.
Like they see it, they feel it, they know what's going on. And when you're not, giving your all and giving your best, that's no different than you trying, like, all right, I don't care if I have a home run or not. Like, it's not just how you play, it's how you play the life.
Absolutely. Well, you'll know this as an employer. When you're getting referrals from people, the first thing you're going to ask is external people that are going to say, like, anytime anybody gets recruited, number one, if you're a high school kid and you think that a scout's not asking your high school coach and all that, they're asking, what type of kid is he? For you, I guarantee when you're looking at agents and you're, handpicking who are the people that I want to be around, you're outsourcing and saying, who are these people around, and what you're asking, what are this type of person outside of the big things? Oh, you sell a lot of houses, but what does that mean beyond that?
But it also comes back to, like, what are you posting out there? Social media is really good,
oh my God,
but it also is really bad, right? Because it's like, all right, if you're posting stuff out there that's not like either neutral or like, here, you're getting all into politics and religion and all the other stuff that people don't want to know. People really don't care.
No.
Ultimately. Like, so it's a matter of, like, what are you doing, and then how are you making society better?
Right. You don't see 1%ers blurting out politics all the time. No. Very few people do that in that section, because it's, to them, they have control of their destiny. They're not letting the next president decide that. Right. They're not letting local municipalities judge whether their success is going to be great or
not. You
still
still got to do your activities.
Yes.
Like, if you're not doing them on a daily basis, and it's a matter of, like, for us, like, staying after, make as many calls as you can to get your appointments. If you didn't get your appointments yet, keep making calls till you get an appointment.
Right. Exactly right. And
you may have some long days.
We talked about the whole concept of, like, the realistic output, goal setting in terms of your visions, because we really tapped on the vision, but I do want to dive deeper and want your opinion on this. So what's your thoughts on, you have the society and norm, right, which is the 99% of the people, and then you have setting realistic goals, because let's be real with ourselves, if you're moving in a direction, you can't just hit the mountain without stepping through the rocks and all the other stuff. So talk to them about in terms of goal setting, because you did a good job with this.
I always set my goals really high.
Yep.
And I would be ones that are like, if the norm's here, I'm always going to go way. And like, I even think when I was selling shoes for JCPenney, like, my manager would double or triple whatever everybody else's was. And, like, I didn't know. He just said, here's your goal of what you need to sell. I'm like, okay. I just went and sold it. I was like, that was my job. So I think that in life, so many times, like, oh, the average agent sells less than 5 homes a year, so my goal should be 5 homes. I'm like, when I heard that, I was like, my first year I sold 36. I'm like, all right, I don't ever want to look at 5. And then also I go against the herd. If the herd's going this way, I'm going the opposite way. If you think of, going from 2008, the financial debacle, all that kind of stuff, where the real estate market was going, when everybody's buying, it's usually not the best time to buy.
Right.
When everybody's selling, usually not the best time to sell either. Right. So it's like, all right, where's your middle ground? And how are you doing something when everybody else isn't? Because when you tend to do that, just like stocks, nobody can really time it out, but it's a matter of, like, do your due diligence, investigate where do you think things are going. You have to think for yourself, first of all, but you also have to gather data. You have to do some work. I mean, that's the biggest problem where people want just the easy handout, is like, you're not doing the hard 4-letter word, and it's work.
Right.
When you work and you find out, and there's so much information on the web.
That's such a good point, because I have a lot of friends that they want to be like one of my friends, he wanted to be a millionaire before 25, which is a great goal. But he didn't have the work and confidence and skill set to assume to make 1 million. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to shoot a goal, when it comes to realistic approach, you got to have very concrete, like we said, goals that are going to make sense relative to where you are right now.
Yes. Well, they got to be smart, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely.
Yep.
So you have to get all that in when you're writing your goals too.
Right. But in the grand scheme of things, like I always have, my perspective is I should never set a limit on my larger goal. You know what I mean? Like you
just need more time sometimes.
Yes, exactly. And time is the most valuable asset. So the quicker you write them down, you have the SMART goals is what you just talked about, and you make them concrete as possible, you'll be like you. I remember you told me, you said, you may not hit your yearly goals, but your 10-year goal, you may smoke it because your yearly goal may be a little bit unrealistic, but because of you getting close to it year over year, you destroy your 10-year goal.
Yeah, because what happens is, people grossly overestimate what they can do in 1 year.
Yeah.
But if you work like that, all of a sudden you keep working like that for 5 years, the compounding effect of things, amazing how things, like all of a sudden now, 5 years I've blown it out. And then when you get to 10, you're like, holy shit, I got to reevaluate this because that was nowhere near high enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the last thing that I want to touch on today, I think we hit a lot of good things in terms of the 1%er energy, the mindset and everything. In terms of energy and the people you hang around, right? That's I think one of the biggest things, your influences.
Yep.
So how can we avoid these toxic people, but also be around the right group? How do you decide these are the right people versus these are the people that aren't going to level?
You can tell, like when you're hanging out with somebody, you can tell who's a battery charger and who's a battery drainer, right? You can usually, when you're having conversation, and then I think of like, is it a 20-second friend, a 2-minute friend, or 20-minute friend, or is it a 2-day friend? Like, how long can you be around?
Super important,
right?
everybody, what that means.
So some people, when you talk to them, you're like, all right, this is going to be a quick conversation. And you got other ones who are like, hey, this is a really good conversation. Let's have more. Let's have lunch. Right. Then that lunch could be like, hey, we're going to go do a trip. Like I have a 5-day mastermind or a week mastermind coming up. Those are all higher level people. You want to be around them because they're all battery chargers. So how are you getting into groups like that are, but it usually comes from the hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when the hard work starts showing up, you start getting invited to things.
Yeah, you know what I found is that when you work on yourself, a lot of the times you're by yourself. Like your 1%ers, unfortunately, they say it's lonely at the top, right? But that is the reality. Yep. CEOs are at the top, but they're also, they're making big decisions that they're not reliant on anybody else but themselves. But I think it's super, I guess, direct in terms of I'm going to commit to my loneliness of work because I'm doing what other people's aren't. And in turn, naturally, you're going to find that, like, I meet you because I made decisions that most 20-year-olds didn't and call you. And so you gave me an opportunity. Up, right. And I'm blessed for it, but it also came from me committing to work and saying, like, I want to do this and this is where I want to go. And I've always, used you as a friend and outside of business stuff because you're a person I want to be around. You're a battery charger. And I try to do the same for you, that when we leave conversations, I feel ready to go, Right. And that's what's an awesome feeling.
How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yep.
Right? So think of people that you're around. And like I've had so many conversations with people at the gym because they see when I'm there, I am so freaking out of breath majority of the workout because I'm giving everything I got the whole time.
Yeah.
And then I live my life that way the same way. It's like, I'll give you all that I got. If I'm selling your house or I'm helping you buy a house, I'm going to give you everything I got. And then some. I'm not leaving anything on the table.
Yep.
I'm not leaving it for later.
Yep.
I'm going to do everything I can. And that's how I've lived my life. And it's like when you do, you tend to attract more of the right people rather than saying, oh, this is what I do. Like, I'm never a big one like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do. Before I go work out, I don't ever be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do more than you today. I'm like, that doesn't do any good. And I'm like, but when I perform and then I have people saying to me like, my God, I was barely breathing. And I look over and you're not even breathing that hard. I was like, wow, that's good to hear because I feel like I can barely breathe.
It's so funny because in the real estate world, unfortunately, a lot of people have these big egos where it's almost like they have to prove something to everybody. Like you have conversations and it's like they're talking about, X, Y, and Z. They sold this. And it's like, bro. Like, people who have it don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't hear you running your mouth about, this, that. It's like, this is what I did today, whatever. But this is what I expect of myself.
When you put 100%, like, nobody can really give 110, right?
Right.
Like, but if you can give 100% of what you got at everything that you do,
Nothing
it's amazing. Well, you'll raise to the top.
Yeah.
But you've got to do the work. And when you do, it will show up.
Yep.
But it does not show up right away. It's like this iceberg here, risk, failure, doubts, criticism, discipline, sacrifice, rejection, late nights, persistent, hard work. Then you get above the waterline and see success.
Yeah.
Because I remember so much of that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like,
yeah.
Saturday morning, I didn't want to get up and go to the gym. Mm-hmm. I was so tired. I was like so congested. And I'm like, I'm just going to go. And then I went, and I was like, I had such a good day.
But that's the 1% mentality, tapping into it, because there was a speech, and the guy, I forgot the dude's name, but he basically said that every brick wall you face, as you climb, gets a little bigger, gets a little taller. Mm-hmm. You're climbing the staircase, here comes another wall. Yep. Each wall is getting harder and harder, right? People think it's easier as you gain more success. Yep. No, it's just a little bit harder.
Yeah, it's farther to fall too.
Right, but because you could fall, and hit even harder. But it's just this. He says it just signifies how bad you want something. Mm-hmm. Some people, the lower you're willing to climb, the more satisfied and the less successful you are. Yeah. But as you get slowly to the top, like, for instance, why do you think all penthouses and the most beautiful views are upstairs? Yeah. Because people are climbing simultaneously. It's like I think it's so beautiful. It's a metaphor of life, of why so many successful people live in penthouses, because they're at the top. Yep. They've assumed every brick wall to eventually get where it's less crowded. Yep. And that's really what it comes down to.
And it's not easy. People want easy. It's not easy, and that's why the 99% don't, because they get to the point where, like, rejection, sacrifice, sleepless nights. Yep. All that, you got to get through it. You're like, no matter what, your goal has to be big enough, and your why. And a lot of time, it really comes back to why. Like, what is it that's most important to you? And you have to dig like 7 levels deep of really why is that? Is that your real why? Dig a little more until you get 7 levels, and it's amazing what will come out of that. But just really think of what's driving you, because a lot of time it's like family. Well, I was pretty driven before I had family.
Right.
I wasn't driven much before. Like, I started working when I was 8.
Right.
I had Josh when I was 16, almost 17. But so they're like, oh, you had a kid. I'm like, yeah, that helped form where I'm going and where I'm doing. But I had drive before it. So it's a matter of, like, I didn't, like, thankfully my parents had a decent life, but they were, bluish white collar. It's like they weren't white collar, they weren't blue, but it was like, we just had to work hard, and my dad taught me those skills of working hard. He didn't teach me how to save then, but then just like you learn that later.
Yeah, but you had a standard for yourself. Like, your standard, like, very similar to where I was it was conditioned to have a 1%. Like, I'm not going to do what everybody else is doing. No. I don't want what
Don't
everybody
follow
else
the herd.
doing.
Do not follow the herd.
So, but that's where we're going to leave off today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're going to take anything from today, I hope we hit a lot of things, but don't follow the herd. Focus on the small habits. Write your goals and be concrete with them, and commit to them every single day. You're not going to be perfect, but you'll get there eventually.